I'm Michael from Enterpret. I lead customer intelligence here. I'm new on this side. I'm a longtime customer, and now on the Enterpret side. And I'm thrilled today to be thinking about something that's been on my mind for a while, which is why do so many customers or why do so many companies claim to be customer centric but often fall short? And today I'm thrilled to be with the Descript team here, Mike and Jill, and we're going to dive deep into their systematic approach into how they're deploying VoC and leveraging technology to do that. And super excited to have you guys here. First of all, a little bit about Descript. It's for folks that don't know, probably not many of you because it's a pretty awesome platform, but it's an AI powered platform that lets you edit media just like you would a document with text. So you don't have to be like a genius production wizard to make really high quality content. It's awesome. Today we have Jill with us. Jill leads she's a director of customer support. She's super passionate about leveraging the wealth of knowledge that her team has to help bring leadership closer to their customers. And along with Jill, we have Mike, who leads the research function. Mike is deeply invested in unearthing and understanding customer needs and has super creative ways to bring those insights throughout the organization. A insight safari is one of them. If you ever meet Mike, ask him about the insight safari. But yeah, let's dive right into today's topic. Thanks for coming, guys. Really appreciate you guys being here.
Definitely excited.
So my first question here is really around kind of your guys' approach and philosophy about thinking about VoC more than just a program, but really as building systems. Can you tell us a little bit more about where this philosophy came from and how does it show up in reality?
Yeah, so the question that is the topic of this session is something that I've been thinking about for years now, and it's something that as so many folks talk about wanting to do more research or being customer centric, like looking into why there's usually such a challenge around that. I found that the lack of systems is typically one of the things that I've run into that ends up taking so much time. So when you have to do one-off projects, or you have to prep data to do one-off analysis, it takes so much time. And when you are limited and you need to make a decision, you're just going to make it usually with the best knowledge you have at that time. A lot of times it's someone's intuition, that usually it's difficult to find the evidence, to back that up. And so for years now, I've been sort of looking at different ways to set up systems in organizations so more folks could be part of the research process. So beyond just being able to do it on an ongoing basis and getting those sort of insights, I think like setting up systems within your organization and processes to manage customer feedback, whether you're soliciting, conducting research, or just trying to analyze it. It's so critical to make it accessible to everyone. So I think one of our approaches is around building systems for the teams to be able to plug into, and by having that collaboration, we have more teams that feel ownership over that research, and it's not just like there's one entity that's sending out insights. There's not just an insights team that's doing that. We have product managers who get into the world of voice of the customer activities and all of that. So I think the key is like setting up the systems to get the right information to the right people at the right time. Jill, is there anything you want to add to that?
I love that framing. Yeah. Jill,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, obviously agree with everything you said. And I think to expand upon like that timing piece is what we find, especially in support, to be so crucial. Coming across, whether it be, you're on a 2-week sprint cycle, and so you're updating, your software often, or going through a major, feature change or just change within the business, or it could be A/B testing, or it could be just, any type of update. There's probably plenty of people in the organization who are wanting to know what's the feedback, right? Like, what is support hearing? What's the sentiment? Are people feeling good about it? Are people feeling bad about it? And just being able to go and, as Mike said, have these systems in place where we can pretty like seamlessly, quickly, all the amazing words there, get that information in front of the right people at the right time, yet again, we have found to be just insanely helpful.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit more about this timing piece. I think you guys mentioned you guys do like bi-weekly releases, or like you guys are releasing stuff pretty often. Um,
Yeah, quite
can you
often.
tell us more about like how critical role that plays into the speed of collecting, curating, delivering insights, and like has that been a forcing function to kind of really rethink kind of the traditional VOC, like, oh, let's build reports, let's work on those, and let's share those out every quarter or every half. Like, how has that evolved over time?
Yeah. I'd say, I mean, we do have, kind of traditional VOC programs in our non-traditional ways, probably, but what I've definitely seen with these biweekly releases, as I said, is just like empowering all the people who want to find this information within Interpret themselves. And Mike and I will go around and just help people get set up and figure out what they need, and then go and seek the answers that they're looking for. And so that could be, within a 2-week period of time, and then more in like the VOC standard support team puts together monthly information as well, which I can gladly go more into depth in a moment. So
Yeah. What about on the research side, Mike? Like, what's your guys' kind of cadence and frequency in which you're pushing information or expecting people to kind of pull from their own systems? And can you shed a little bit of light into how that works?
Sure. So as we think about research and how it fits into just like an overall voice of the customer program, we have a bunch of different things we do. So one of them is every week, as you mentioned, we have this thing called Insight Safari, where we will we've now invited the entire company to join us for an hour on Friday afternoons, where we will screen footage from research sessions of could be people who are new to Descript, people who are using some aspect of our app or have some use case that we are actively investigating, especially across teams. So stuff like that. So weekly we have those sort of like viewing parties, and we all just sort of like chat as we're playing the footage. And then there's from a lot of that, there's like follow-ups that happen. And so the cool thing about having things in place like Interpret or having either stuff already set up, reports already set up, or it's just so easy to go get some insights. When someone asks, how frequently are we seeing this sort of thing we just saw in this footage? We can very quickly go and get a really decent idea of the scope of like how often we're getting that sort of feedback, because we have a lot of our feedback sources aggregated all into Interpret. So so weekly sharing footage, digging into what folks are saying about certain aspects of the experience, and then as we're doing planning, there's usually a bunch that comes up with doing like ad hoc reports there. And then there's also just sort of like studies that we'll do for investing in different enhancements of the product or anything there. So, but the ad hoc nature, by having the systems there, like when you need some information, you're already set up and ready to go. And I think that's like the biggest value of all of that. Because a lot of times just pushing out information that might not be relevant, it's not nearly as helpful as getting people the right information at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting because I've always felt like you can't replicate that feeling and emotion of seeing a user struggle with your product. And then, like you said, the next like logical question is like, oh, how bad is this problem? And so you're combining that emotional kind of like feeling with the hard evidence, like in that moment. And I'm imagining that's really driving action at a much faster pace than perhaps before.
Yeah, and I should also mention that like in between all of this, there's a bunch of teams that have set up subscriptions to feedback that comes through Interpret. And as far as like what we have going into Interpret, at least, is we have customer support tickets, we have customer sentiment surveys, We have reviews from G2, stuff from Reddit communities, our community Discord, community Slack. And so, oh, and then also research sessions go in there.
Oh, wow.
Just tag the sessions in green where that's our research, video research library, and then have them all flow over there. So it's really
Wow.
awesome to just see all of that together and have like a single place to go in and not have to worry about trying to pull things together with VLOOKUPs and spreadsheets and everything.
Yeah.
Is the old way.
That's wonderful. That was always on my roadmap, was to be able to kind of combine the research data with kind of your day-to-day customer support, social, and all of that other data. Jill, I'd love to hear from you the balance of kind of pushing and pulling information now that you have these systems in place, and
Mm.
kind of how does that shape your team's like insight production?
Yeah. So was talking a little bit before about more of our like reactionary response, right? Somebody may come to us and say, "Oh, we just launched this thing, get us some feedback." But outside of that, we're also doing a monthly voice of customer, and we call it voice of customer, internally readout, where it's really twofold. It's the first bit is we get an allotted time at our all hands meeting each month where we play a pre-done, pre-made 2 to 3 minute, almost like highlight reel, clickbait, whatever you want to call it, just really like broad scope, like strokes of what happened this past month within support. And it does actually grab people's attention, and some good conversations come out of that meeting. And often it's like, ooh, that sounded important, tell me more. And so to pair with that, we have Notion database, which basically is populated from using Enterpret, and we're pushing people into Enterpret as well, where they can go and say, oh, there's this topic we brought up. Now you can dive deeper and figure out all of the insights you have. You can read user quotes, and kind of get more in touch with what our users are saying. So we've been on a journey to like reach this point. And there's, uh, been a few attempts and a few it just hasn't caught on. And lately, both Mike and I have really, gotten strides in a lot of really great areas. In getting this voice of customer feedback sent out to the whole organization, and people are hungry for it. And I think that's important as well. Is we're often asked, like, tell me more, tell me everything, tell me tell me all of it. And every single time we just go into our systems that we have in place, and we're really easily able to get them that information.
That's amazing. It is so much more rewarding when you're at an organization that is like hungry and asking for it versus like trying to get on your soapbox and be like, hey, listen. So, but it definitely shows in the product and the company itself. So I'm not too surprised to hear that from you guys. Shifting gears a little bit, one thing I've been really impressed with just talking to you and understanding your guys' approach is just how collaborative you guys are. And in my experience, that's always been kind of a stumbling block with a lot of VoC programs. It's like even the most well-intended leaders will want to spin this effort up. But what ends up happening is they kind of stumble over each other or talk over each other or have like weird timing with their reports, which can create a lot of dissonance with kind of your audience. How did you guys build this like dynamic duo, and maybe tell us like how other leaders can think about partnering cross-functionally with other teams that are kind of on the same mission to unlock this type of customer insights?
I would say, it was, we sort of, let's say we sort of stumbled into it, but like it was something that, like looking back on it, now have a much better idea of like what I would recommend to folks. So the project here with implementing Interpret was actually what facilitated, I think, a lot of our collaboration. And that got me, being able to get into more of the customer support data and hear what Jill was working towards and how how she's looking at managing the feedback and having the agents help do some organization with it and all of that. And so that just sort of snowballed and continued going. And I would say that like thinking about all the folks in the organization who are collecting feedback in some way, whether it's support tickets or it's talking to customers and finding ways to, you know, having a conversation, trying to figure out like, how do we work together to, again, to build this system where it's not just one thing. The voice of the customer isn't just one presentation, but is a multi-pronged approach where we have a bunch of different um, things in place, whether it's subscriptions to a certain feed of feedback in Slack, or it's a weekly Friday meeting, or it's a teaser video that's sent out every month to get people intrigued and digging into the data more.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a happy accident, but it was, but it's one of those, like, everyone should learn by our happy accident mistake, and exactly. You should have
Yeah.
all the information you have with your users should be ported in the same system to easily access.
So maybe let me ask you guys a more pointed question. There's folks I'm talking to that are like, how should we deploy Interpret or a system like this? And, from my early customer success days, it was usually like land in one department and expand from there. But would you recommend someone going into this to really think holistically, cross-functionally about all the data sources and like ways of using it and do it kind of in a concerted effort from the start, or start small and expand from there?
My stance is you put it all in from the beginning.
Yeah.
You're going to miss insights if you don't, right? Like,
Yeah.
the fact that, like you were saying, is the fact that we have our support tickets in here, as well as user research calls and surveys and all of that. If you're looking up a topic, it's encompassing all of that information, and you're going to miss out on really impactful insights or quotes or something like that if you don't port all of the information in. And as said, happy accident that we did that from the beginning. And it was just like magical timing of all the things that fell into place. But I think it's why there's so much success with it.
Yeah, I think there's just been a lot of instances where we've been able to like demonstrate the value of it just by providing folks with access to certain reports or creating something and sharing it or embedding it in some sort of planning doc. And um, that's just sort of gotten more and more folks engaged and interested to use it. And then we start to hear people talking about, oh, I went into Interpret and I saw XYZ. And I was, sitting there thinking like, I don't think we ever talked about how to use Interpret, or I had no idea that you were going in there and doing that. And it's like, it feels like when you see that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that just being able to find all the opportunities you can to share out the insights, those sort of cross-channel insights, once you do bring it together, is where I think you start to find the even more opportunities. And I think that's sort of what we're doing, is just trying to find opportunities. And I feel like weekly we're finding even more opportunities to help folks create reports, get insights into things. I just had a research engineer come to me because he was working on improving the transcription quality. And we're on a call and he's talking me through the metrics in which they're looking at QAing the some of the new transcription models they have. And so on that call, I was able to, in just moments, was able to um, get a feed of all the transcription issues. And then I posed, the scenario around like, we're looking at improving transcription quality and we're trying to derive metrics for testing the quality of the transcription, and based on the feedback, what metrics should we consider? And there were 3 or 4 of them that the engineer never even had in his list, but are pretty crucial to the experience. And they were things I've seen in research sessions before, but like, there's so much thrown at you in those things that it's really easy to lose sight of some of those. And so just having something like this help me see and helped our team see that it can help augment our perspective in things that we might have missed and be able to do it in a way that is, didn't take any other time. We got off the call. He has what he needs. He has the insight. He was able to act on that feedback. And that felt like a big win there.
Yeah, that's super cool because I think rewind 3, 4, 5 years ago, if you didn't have a system in place, what that scenario would have been, oh, that's interesting. Let's add that to a backlog, and maybe that's a project we can spin up if we had more resources. And then, of course, you've missed that moment, and the person, like you said earlier, like goes and makes a decision with the best information they have, and you live with those. So yeah, that's an awesome kind of story that you just shared there. I could talk to you guys forever. I have a million questions, but I want to be generous and share with our audience here who took time out of their busy day to hear more from you and ask questions. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'm going to go to the Q&A, and there's some questions in here. Folks are asking anonymously. Maybe that means these are spicy questions. I don't know. We'll find out. But let me tee up the first one here. So in terms of helping teams slash through the weeds and the sheer volume of new insights, how do you ensure VoC insights are actionable and lead to tangible outcomes? Also, how often do you check back with teams that you've decided to take action on this insight? This is a really good question. It's when, from my experience, when you've built these systems and you're kind of like, oh, if we build it, they will come. How do you know that they came and they got the value out of the system you built? So I'm curious how you guys are approaching that aspect.
You want me to go?
Yep.
I can start. A lot of it is we tried the approach of if we build it, they will come, and maybe didn't find great success. And so then it became more of, well, I'll feed it to you. Like, let me just really put this in front of you. That's when we started making sure, okay, we're going to include this video at all hands. I said, it's short. It's 2 to 3 minutes, right? And it like whets your appetite for what you want. And then you naturally need to know more. And so then you're going to dive into the places where you're feeding you all the more insights and information. And from the support side, we make sure that we're not necessarily sharing like, here's the top 10 reasons why people reach out to support. There's a lot of support problems, which aren't even problems, right? There's a lot of reasons people reach out to support that probably aren't actionable. There's just support questions. And so we are doing our own interpretation of this to find, well, that information is important mainly for us. Let's find what's important for the rest of the company and make sure they understand, here's where features can improve. Here's where users are getting held up the most when they're using it. And then a lot of that is paired with Mike, right? Like the voice of customer is not just support. We'll talk about our topics, and then you'll go find like amazing user quotes of somebody using that exact workflow in a user research session. And we pair that in. So it's like, here's the quantity of it, and also here's a walkthrough of watching somebody do that painful thing, and it just elicits emotions and gut reactions of, oh, that's bad, I want to fix it.
Yeah, I would say like I also would try to find all the opportunities possible, since getting Enterpret up and running, to enrich the perspectives we have with the insights from there. So I just look at it as like another source to sort of triangulate findings from research that we do. So if I'm doing a set of research sessions around some product area or some workflow area, I'll usually also go into Enterpret and see like how are other people experiencing that, and then enrich the any sort of research synthesis I have with perspectives from Enterpret as well. So it's just been this sort of like common thing that we consistently keep finding ways to incorporate it and continue to enrich our perspectives, because why not? If we can pull everything into one place, it's really interesting to see, how people express, similar challenges, but you can see that like it all impacts them and could be in similar ways that we can improve. And so a lot of times it ends up being in as part of that like study, but then also what'll happen is I've noticed as far as like more sort of like evergreen implementation of the reports and stuff has been using it in like a study that informs something we're creating. And then once we create the thing, we put it out into the world. A lot of times we'll create a report to then let us, keep our finger on the pulse of how things are going. And so that's been like the trajectory of using something like this.
I love that because it's actually kind of reframing the question of like, how do you measure when someone uses something in your system, right? And it's like thinking about it, it's like it's not necessarily an ATM, but it is a system that enables these types of experiences that you guys are creating for your product builders and your leaders. And I think that's like a really powerful learning that resonates with me because I had that same like if you build it they will come, and it's like, oh crap, no, they're not. Like they might be coming but I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's really more of this concierge and this like programmatic push and pull and balancing all of that. And it seems like you guys are doing it in a really well orchestrated way. So that's super impressive.
Yeah, I mean, all you need is a couple instances of finding something that other folks didn't know about and they learned from this system. I mean, this was like I could think of like just a quick little anecdote. The last week I was creating a video for something and I realized that that there was this issue where it said that I had uploaded my media and it said that that it had transcribed it successfully, but there was no transcription from the media. So I was just kind of curious what happened, and I looked in our analytics tool, and our analytics tool reported that it successfully transcribed the media. It didn't. I open up Interpret just to see, like, kind of curious, like how many other folks are running into this. And I go into the feed, and the second piece of feedback from customer support that had just come in that I saw right there was someone describing the very same issue. I uploaded my media and it said it was transcribed. It's not transcribed. I can't get it to work. And like just being able to find that and then share that with the engineers and say, hey, look, we're finding even more people having this. Um, and also our analytics are off. So now this is something that's bringing in the data science team and the engineering team to be aware of, again, things that we weren't before this. And so it really helped to get that insight other than just me experiencing this.
Yeah. Love it. Because it's, again, if you compare this to how how that would showed up in the past, it's like, oh, is this an issue? Oh, I don't know. Back to my day to day, right? And who knows how long customers are going to live and experience that pain or that issue to address it. Awesome. There's a bunch of questions here around prioritization. Maybe just like a real lightning round. Can you guys talk about how unmet needs or features or new things get prioritized when you have feedback coming from all different sources and kind of unified? Is it help? Is it make it more challenging? Or how are you guys approaching the kind of roadmap prioritization challenge?
Our own roadmap, or are you saying I was reading these questions?
Like
are we
the
saying
Descript roadmap.
prioritizing? Okay, Mike, I don't know. You're embedded in that process, so you might be good at answering that one too.
I would say I think it kind of goes back and forth between I think like because it's this sort of like we take this sort of like continuous discovery approach for the research, like we generally have an idea, like every month we would hear issues related to performance issues. So these things that just kept coming up over and over again. Um, so so that's where like as it just keeps coming up through the reports, those thematic things end up in, as considerations for planning. And so then from that process and what we decide to align on, then providing perspectives around, strategically where we want to go, and then perspectives on different things we can approach. And I actually think one of the ways that this really helps prioritization is to understand like very quickly what's the scope of this issue versus this issue, and like what's the pain of this issue versus that issue. And so I think that really helps because you could do that comparison so fast as compared to in the past. What I would have to do is prepare a spreadsheet. I would most likely do something to then filter it down and look at it few different ways, but like
Yeah.
that took hours and this
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, it sounds like something I've experienced, which is like when you build these systems where people have more real time and direct access to the feedback, you actually are less reliant on these big prioritization rituals or processes. And I learned this hard well, my first time delivering a VoC stack ranking report at Figma. One of the VP of products, like, Michael, we already know all this. Like, why did you spend all this time telling us stuff we already know? And then that evolved to like, hey, this isn't a surprise. This is a conversation for us to get aligned and, dig into these topics that you guys already know about. And like you said, size, scope, triangulate. And it became a lot more productive and less of a big deal, you know. Very cool. Awesome. We're at time. Thank you so much, Jill and Mike. I wish we had more time. We'd love to continue this conversation, have this dialogue. And on that note, for folks that are interested in these types of conversations and topics, please check out the link. Tiffany's going to share it, but we're going to start a community to connect VOC leaders like Jill and Mike together to share insights, share our journey, and continue this movement. So thank you so much for everyone for joining. Thank you, Jill and Mike, and good luck with your VOC journey.
Thanks all.